mic was off. We're off to a great start.
Kraken rod or something like that. Oh, okay. Apparently I
was gonna ride that one.
into a wall.
Number 5 is Tremors Shrieker Island.
I knew it. I knew it.
What's up, boy? Oh boy.
Cast this man up!
Very nice, and
Sergeant Rescue. Oh! Oh no!
What's your favorite starting Pokemon Gen 1? That's the question. And if it isn't Squirtle Squad, you're doing it wrong.
And it won't just be these specific decks or even the specific format. Maybe one time we'll do Two-Headed Giant or whatever, but we're starting with that today.
I think it'll be less than 50 episodes before I break max.
Is that a promise?
That's a guarantee.
The mark guaranteed. Breaking max in 50 episodes or less.
Alright, we got 2 of them. Look at this. Who needs guns when you have a warthog?
Ah! What? Are you kidding me? How many freaking times do I have to kill this guy?
I love coming back to this exact route once you have your full team and you just see these little squirrels facing off against like literal gods and giants. It's like, oh, oops.
he said stop. No, I think I'll cut you in half.
No. This guy down. That's right. Merry Christmas, you filthy animal.
The Grey Dwarf said I can't handle that financially. Doesn't matter if it's a Grey Dwarf, because the tree will just fall on you. Why do I even do the video game thing?
Where's he at? Ah, that was it. Woo-hoo-hoo-hoo.
Down one.
Good to go.
Oh shoot! Dang it!
Good now.
Down two.
Not many.
Down three.
Hello and welcome to the Infinity Bros podcast, the only podcast that is perfectly balanced as all things should be. My name is Isaac Edlin. I'm your host tonight, and I am joined by one other fellow Infinity Bro. It is Jarrett Curtis. How you doing, Jarrett?
I'm doing great. I was promised that Zane would be here, but to my surprise, he was not. So please, as you're listening to this podcast, stop what you're doing. Go bully him and say, get on an episode with Jarrett, because I miss his sweet and sultry voice. But Isaac, I'm glad to be with you tonight.
I am glad to be with you as well, Jarrett. We do miss Zane. It's been a hot minute since we've had him, his sweet and sultry voice on the podcast, like you said. But we're going to get him on soon. And you might be seeing him quite a bit on Twitch this month because it's Spoopy month. It is currently October 1st as we are recording this. And we're going to be planning a lot of spooky streams. Friday the 13th, Dead by Daylight. Possibly some other... Zane and I usually get together a spooky stream or two from the Dark Pictures anthology. I think the one this year is dropping in November, however. So I think we got to wait a little bit longer for that this year. But yeah, we might get a spooky stream going.
Check us out on Twitch, because me and Zane have dropped... This is like 3 weeks in a row that him and I have done a stream together.
Yeah, yep.
So he's he's kind of killing it on Twitch right now.
Yeah, he is. If you want to talk to Zane or see him or hear him, Twitch is the place to go. But you can also check out the Infinity Bros on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and YouTube as well. Or you can check out theinfinitybros.com for all your Infinity Bros needs. Jarrett, we are here to talk about some big projects that we've actually not reviewed at all on the Infinity Bros podcast yet.
Which is wild, but yeah. Let's go.
It is wild because one of these has been going on for like over a month now. Yeah, I think over a month. And that is Rings of Power, the Lord of the Rings series by Amazon Prime or Prime Video.
The little known IP Lord of the Rings produced
little
by
known, yeah, exactly.
indie company Amazon. Yeah,
indie company
we have it
Amazon.
covered.
Yep, exactly. And then the second one is Star Wars Andor, which just dropped on Disney Plus last week. I got another episode this week, so we're going to be catching up on both of those big shows. We are not catching up on She-Hulk because Jarrett sadly has not listened to or watched any of She-Hulk yet. Are you going to like wait until it's just all out so you can binge it all? Is that what your plan is? Or
you want to know what my plan is? My plan is there is no plan.
Classic.
No, I don't know what it is, man. I haven't had the desire to watch TV at all, which is a shame because, man, if I had realized how good Rings of Power was, and we'll talk more about this in a minute, I would have been like bated breath waiting for that to every week. But no, I haven't watched anything. I haven't watched the new Game of Thrones. What is it? House of the Dragon.
House of the Dragon.
I haven't watched any Rick and Morty. I don't watch TV anymore. I don't know what's happened to me.
Well, like you said in our Patreon exclusive portion of the podcast, if you want to hear Jarrett's thoughts on several properties, including MTG's latest Secret Lair drops and announcements, all the things that they've got going on, check out the Infinity Bros Patreon. And there's also some exclusive Patreon episodes that you can get access to for only $5 a month, and if you want access to unedited episodes, it's only $2 a month. So make sure you guys check that out. Really great deal. And these Patreon episodes, I mean, they end up getting long. Like there are some of them that almost go like as long as our Infinity Bros podcast episodes. So definitely worth it for the amount of content you're getting. But anyways, so Jarrett talked a little bit about that on the Patreon portion, but you also mentioned on the portion that you started school. So that's kind of why you're getting tired out and not being able to watch as much stuff, correct?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, like I work in a school and kids, I love them, but they can be really exhausting. And the classroom that I'm in this year has a broken heating unit in it. I mean, like, I don't think the heating unit is actually broken. I think our thermostat is broken. And so it's stuck at like 90 degrees. And so when you're dealing with kids in a hot environment, they're crabby, you're crabby, and you're just trying your best every day. You come home a little tired.
For success, right?
So I come home and I'm exhausted, and I'm like, I either do my adult responsibilities and I stay awake, or I put a TV show on and I fall asleep on the couch. And so, like, to be a good human being, I stay awake and I do what I got to do.
Well, good for you on being a good human being and not being trashed like the rest of us who are watching all these shows. So, but I mean, you're totally not wrong though. Like so much freaking content that's coming out right now.
Lot.
And it's tough to keep up with all of it. So I myself have only watched, I think, the first episode of Rick and Morty, and I mean those are short, quick episodes, and they don't really take a whole lot of brain power, like like Rings of Power or House of the Dragon. You kind of like gotta
focus.
Yeah, you got to be like mentally prepared because they're throwing a lot of stuff at you in those like hour-long episodes.
Yeah. And a lot of really complicated names that you have to remember.
Yeah, exactly. And we're going to get into that in just a few minutes. But first, I did want to mention that we have this special rating system on the Infinity Bros podcast. So if you haven't listened to the Infinity Bros podcast before, here it is. And we are going to be fully spoiling both Rings of Power all the way through. What are we on now? Episode 6, 7? I think it's 7.
It's got to be episode 6.
maybe 6. Anyways, all the way to the current episode that just dropped today on October 1st. And we're going to be spoiling the first 4 episodes of Andor. So here is your spoiler warning. All right, guys, lots of stuff to get into with both Rings of Power and Andor. Jarrett, I'm going to let you pick. What are we doing for? What do we want to talk about first? Do we want to talk about Rings of Power? We've kind of
I want to
dabbled
save.
with Lord of the Rings a little bit with the Patreon portion.
I
but
feel like I want to talk about Rings of Power just because I feel like I have more to talk about with that.
Gotcha.
Let's do that
Okay.
first, and then we can end it with Andor.
Gotcha. Okay, sounds good. Let's do it. So, Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. I mean, we already talked about that we haven't reviewed this at all on the Infinity Bros podcast, just because there's been so much content that we've been reviewing, and She-Hulk kind of is our main focus. If you guys want to hear our She-Hulk reviews, go back. Episode 136 is the most current review of the She-Hulk Attorney at Law show on Disney Plus. With several of our members, Robbie, Mark, and Max, reviewing that. Ton of content to go through right now. So we just haven't even gotten around to Rings of Power, and which is a travesty because this show, in my opinion, and yours, is fantastic. So really excited to talk about this with you. So just a real quick synopsis here. Epic drama set thousands of years before the events of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings follows an ensemble cast of characters, both familiar and new, as they confront the long-feared reemergence of evil to Middle-earth. So for those of you guys who aren't super deep into Tolkien and Lord of the Rings lore, this is a show that takes place like thousands of years before the Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Right.
So we do have a few familiar faces, like I mentioned, with some elves and some characters that are mentioned in lore. But most of these characters are brand new to us and kind of brand new to fiction in general, because they create a lot of these characters for this show, as they do not have the rights to the Silmarillion. I cannot say that right the first time ever. The Amazon Prime does not have the rights to the Silmarillion, so they didn't do like a 1-to-1, all right, I mean, any adaptation is tough to do 1-to-1, but
Right.
it's more of a kind of a read between the lines, and they're doing the best that they can to try to keep the continuity of the Lord of the Rings lore without taking anything out of the Silmarillion for that. So it's kind of an interesting adaptation of a TV show, because we don't really know what's going to happen, but in a sense we do, because obviously we have watched the Lord of the Rings trilogy and we know what ends up happening in those. So let's just dive right into it, Jarrett. So we are up to episode 6 right now.
Okay.
Looking at it here, episode 7 drops on the 7th. This drops every Friday. So we're up to episode 6, and there's several different storylines here, but I'm going to let you pick one and run with it, and we'll talk about it, everything that's happened up to this point. So we got what's happening in Numenor, with actually kind of wrapping in a few different storylines up to this point, but we got Galadriel and Halbrand. One of those guys.
Yeah.
Halbrand. Galadriel and Halbrand, and they just, in this most recent episode, finally made it to the southern lands, and kind of were trying to help out those guys that were dealing with the orcs. We've got the Harfoots, which we've got Nori, who discovered this unnamed person who is helping them out, and he's got he seems like to be a sorcerer of some kind. And then we've got what else do we have? I'm trying to think of, well, I guess we have along the same lines that intersected in this episode. We've got now I'm blanking on the names of the elf here.
The village crew.
Yeah,
Arondir and Bronwyn.
Bronwyn, yes. And then so they've been kind of like fending off the orcs in the Southlands up to this point, where in episode 6 they are met by the Numenorians and they kind of help them out. So which of those storylines do you want to pick up and run with here so far?
Oh gosh, I think of them all, I'm really invested in the folks that like are trying to survive the orc onslaught in the town. Like Ishmael Cordova, who plays Arondir, that elf. First of all, like the best looking dude on earth. Like if I could go back in time and like make myself look like somebody, I'd want to look like that dude. He is a handsome
For
man.
real. Yes, he is.
But that, to me, that's like the most engaging storyline right now. Obviously, like end of episode 6, like everything kind of comes to a head. But man, that was the storyline that really invested me right away.
All right, let's dive right into that. So, Arondir is an elf that basically was watching over this area of the Southlands because previously, in the lore here, like the people of the Southlands basically helped Morgoth kind of conquer the world type of thing.
Right.
So the elves defeat them, and now they're just like watching over them because from what it seems through the first couple episodes is the elves basically believe that these people are just evil. Like,
Right.
even though this is like centuries removed, I think he says that he's been watching over them for like 70 some years or something like that.
Right.
Like, they still believe that like at heart, basically they are evil, which they're not entirely wrong because a huge
A good
group
chunk
of
of
their
them
crew
did get it. Yeah.
goes and literally joins Adar and their orc crew over there. So but yeah, I mean, you're totally hit it on the head though. Like the dude is a very beautiful human. So I see what Bronwyn sees in him for sure. So, and there's this one moment, and this is very interesting because you kind of see all these villagers and they're literally just like struggling to survive, and all these elves are like kind of living the life and lording it over them, so to speak, and the elves understand that they're there for a reason, but at this point in the story, the villagers are like, I mean, they see them as kind of the enemy at this point because they don't really have any other enemies.
Right.
So I mean, they are like, they finally get disbanded because they don't think it's necessary. So they decide to check out what's going on with all the mysterious happenings in nearby villages and stuff like that. But I want to mention like the one thing in this storyline that was just like, this was I think my favorite part in this show so far was when they decided when they're like in their village and they start like the kid, the kid's name?
Theo.
Theo. Bronwyn's excuse me, Bronwyn's son says he's been like hearing the scratching, like the rats, for weeks. And finally a dude just like pops through the floor.
Right.
And like, this is, I think from what I remember, this is a couple weeks ago now, but from what I remember, I think this is the first time we like see an orc in the show. And I gotta say, the mix of practical effects and CGI that they're using in the show is incredible.
Bro, that
like,
scene was freaky.
It was so, and like you can tell that they're using a lot of practical effects, which looks fantastic because for a lot of you Lord of the Rings fans, we remember going back to The Hobbit, which I still love the Hobbit movies, but man, you can absolutely tell that like 95% of those movies are all CGI. Like they didn't use a ton of practical effects for those TV show or those movies. So it is refreshing to see how much practical effects that they've put into this show. And they've put, like, I think we did a TikTok on it a while ago. This is like a $1 billion show. Like they've put so much. I think it was like 50+ million into each episode, which for a TV episode is bonkers.
That's wild.
Like no TV shows get that budget. None. So the amount of money that they're putting into the show is showing up on screen. I think the show.
Do you think?
looks
Okay,
fantastic.
just like I don't mean to pull us off the track too much, but
Nope, you're fine.
do you think the return on investment is there for something like this? Like, have you heard of people buying Amazon Prime to watch this?
That's tough because I feel like Amazon Prime is like the one thing that everybody has.
Sure.
Like even among people like my family that do not have streaming services, they have Amazon Prime because they have Amazon Prime. They didn't have it
For the
for
shipping,
the
right.
Prime Video, but now they have it, so they already had it, so now they can watch this stuff.
That makes sense.
But like I think the ROI is probably there because, and all these numbers are so flimsy and wishy-washy, I feel like, but like
Ethereal, sure.
they that first House of the Dragon episode for HBO Max, they reported that like 10 million people watched that first episode like within 24 hours or something like that. It was like something in roughly in that ballpark. And then Amazon came out and said that 25 million people watched the
Holy cow.
first episode of Rings of Power in the first 24 hours. And then like, you know, all these numbers are self-reported by Amazon and
Yeah.
HBO Max. So like who knows what like things they're using to take into that account and stuff like
That's
that.
not like Amazon and Jeff Bezos is really hurting for money anyway. So.
No. But like,
Yeah.
I mean, I gotta believe that like so many people are watching this, whether they are watching it because they love it or they're watching it just to hate watch it. Like
That's funny.
they're watching
that
it one
probably
way
is.
or the other, honestly. So I think they're getting their money's worth out of this, and it's already been renewed for season 2. So like we're getting
There
more.
was
It's not.
it's
not
there was
like
a whole
we're-
Twitter thread on this where somebody went through and listed all of like these accounts that are like live tweeting themselves like watching Lord of the Rings and just like complaining about it. And it's like you realize like you're still paying to watch this.
Like why? I just don't understand. I mean, I think Zane and I got into this a little bit earlier
Sure.
On a Patreon episode, but like we haven't dove into it on an Infinity Bros podcast episode. But like this series is getting so much hate for like no reason at all. I think for nothing else, if you hate everything about this story, you can still watch this and think that this is top notch production.
Yeah.
Like there is not like House of the Dragon is up there as well. That show looks phenomenal, but like these two shows are like you can't watch another TV show and say it looks as good as these two shows. Like Rings of Power looks incredible. And if nothing else, they've captured the feel of Middle Earth from the original trilogy, in my opinion. I think they've done an amazing job
Yeah.
of how this show looks. Now,
I think in general,
if you want
like,
to get
they've-
into
oh, sorry, go ahead.
like the story, I think there's definitely some things that you can nitpick if you really,
Sure.
really want to get into it. But anyways, continue saying something.
I think like obviously I love the story, I love the writing. I think they did a fantastic job with that. There are parts that I don't like, but I think in general, but like you can attribute a lot of that to just me being a fan of Lord of the Rings. If you were completely divorced from this IP, you didn't care about any of it. I think it still has a lot for people who don't care about these things. Obviously, like visually amazing. I think the actors and actresses, like, there is not a bad apple in the bunch. Like, they are all doing their jobs to the
Right.
extreme. And so I think the only thing is maybe if you aren't invested in the story, and even then, like, it's very, they have a little bit of everything for everybody, and I think that's important. Like, I don't know if I could convince my family to watch most of these Marvel shows, just because a lot of them tend to be like a very specific style.
True.
Whereas like this, I don't know. I feel like this just has so much for everybody.
Right.
A lot of action, a lot of drama.
And I feel like it captures a much broader audience because almost everybody has had some exposure to Lord of the Rings, whether you watch the movies for the first time and love those, or if you read the books before you watch the movies, or if you haven't even watched the movies and you just read the books. There's
Dude,
some
Hobbit
level...
was required reading in my school. So
right,
like,
exactly. I read The Hobbit, I think in like 5th or 6th grade. Like it was pretty influential on me. And I think, gosh, now I'm trying to think. So those movies came out like early 2000s. Like I think
Yeah.
2001 probably was like maybe the first one or something
let
like
me
that.
Google Fellowship of the Ring.
So I was like,
2001.
I think I had read those like along the same time as I was seeing the movies, like in like early or late elementary school and middle school is like when I read The Lord of the Rings for the first time. And that's like when the movies were coming out. So like for me, this Lord of the Rings IP is like super influential, like more so even than Marvel. Like I like superheroes and stuff at that point, but
Right.
like this was way more influential in like my early pop culture life, or however you want to say it. So
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, just I think everybody can look at these and at least be semi interested and, you know, think about giving it a shot. So they've got that going for them for sure, just with the name behind it. But yeah, and then with the production aspect, looks fantastic. But there is, I will concede that there's some story elements that some people could, you know, possibly have issues with. At
Sure.
this point, to me, I just feel like, and this episode, this latest episode, episode 6, did a lot for starting to wrap kind of these storylines together, and we're starting to see some payoffs in this storyline, which I think is a lot of what people were really upset about. Is that this is, I mean, it was kind of a slow building story at first, and in this day and age, I'm going to be completely honest, I feel like we're so used to like action, like, man, everything is so cool. So what, like when there's a slow moving dialogue focused episode of something, sometimes we're just like, oh man, I just wanted to see something blow up and something really cool.
I'm gonna throw this out there. And you can clip this and put it on TikTok and on
Okay.
Instagram and on Reels.
Noted.
TikTok has ruined people. Like, I've noticed
I
the
agree.
attention span of everyone around me. TikTok is like one of the worst things to happen to humanity. People have no patience anymore.
Dude, I'm totally with you, because I've heard people have the same complaints of Andor, honestly, and we'll get into that later. But like, this is a slow building series, and what I think is really comes down to is that they knew that this is going to go more than season 1. They knew that this is going to go a couple seasons, so they have a vision, and they're not going to rush it like these 6-episode Marvel series that come out, and try to cram as much as they can into these.
And that's
little
the thing, is
miniseries,
people
you know?
complain when they just throw everything at you and say, all right, we're done.
Right, exactly. And nobody, like almost nobody, I shouldn't say nobody liked them, because we all generally liked them, but like almost nobody was like, this is the best TV show of all time to any of the Marvel shows.
Sure.
Because it felt like that. It felt like they were just like cramming as much as they could into these short 6 episodes, and they were just leaving some story elements out. And so sure, yeah, the story was boom, 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 and like if you missed an episode, you're going to miss some things, but ultimately they just couldn't wrap it all together in a satisfying way for a lot of these shows, which I think that means with these shows, with Rings of Power, House of the Dragon, Andor, is what it seems to be shaping out to be. We're going to get slower moving shows, but hopefully those payoffs at the end of the season are going to be a lot bigger than what we've experienced in these really short, you know, Marvel miniseries. So sorry, we totally got derailed from what we were talking about previously. But what did you find interesting about the Bronwyn and Villager storyline, Jarrett?
I think the idea of like how her son was seduced through the power of this sword, I think is like very, like, that screams Lord of the Rings to me. And it's something like, I play a lot of D&D and I try to emulate that. Like, people have to have a reason to want to do something bad. Like, people aren't just bad to be bad. Like, something seduces them towards evil.
Well, and I mean, man, it's such a parallel to how we see in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. They give a recap of kind of like how the ring came to,
Right.
to Bilbo and Frodo, all this stuff. And we see Isildur, which we have
Right.
in this series. And it was the same thing for him. Like he fought Sauron and ultimately destroyed him, and the ring seduced him, and
Right.
he kept it for himself, and eventually that was what came to the end of him. But yeah, it's just like that was a cool parallel that I kind of got out of that. Like, yeah, man, all the power that he felt really was like drawing him to the dark side of
Yeah.
Sauron. So, but yeah, that was a really cool parallel. So I get that, man. I think that's, and then the last episode, we finally get to see, they use the whatever the dude's name, the bad guy that went to the orcs and gave himself up. He gets to use the key
Oh
to
yeah.
unlock whatever it is at the end that we don't really get to see anything
Can
of.
I
But
say I did not expect this to be as like dark and heavy as it is. There's
dude,
some
it is
serious horror
dark
aspects.
for
And
real.
when he says like that your what does he say? Like your allegiance must be bought in blood. And he
Hmm.
straight up murders that kid. I was like,
Yeah.
dang, they're not messing
Yeah,
around with
dude. I
this.
know. I watched an episode with my wife, and she's not like super, like she's
Sure.
watched Lord of the Rings, of course, but she's not like super into it and stuff. But she watched one episode with me, and she was like, "Oh, okay. Like I
This is
guess we're
real
just like
stuff.
we're
Yeah.
just murdering people left and right. Like there's
Yeah.
blood splattering everywhere. Like
That was
they're not
hardcore.
pulling any punches with this, which I really appreciate, because this is high fantasy. I mean, we kind of talked about this a little bit earlier. Like this is high fantasy. This is like medieval, you know, vibes that we have
Yeah.
going on here. There should be a lot of blood. There should be a lot of violence. So I think I love that they're going with that really dark, gritty like version of Lord of the Rings. And Lord of the Rings is dark and gritty. Like don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. Like you watch those original trilogies, or the trilogy, and man, there is some dark stuff. Like as a middle schooler watching those movies, I remember having like nightmares about the Lord of the Rings trilogy, because it got dark. It got really dark. But yeah, I like that they are keeping the feel of that,
Yeah.
which you didn't get in the Hobbit movies. Like
Right.
those, and granted, I will say, like, the Hobbit book feels a lot different than the Lord of the Rings
Yeah.
books. It feels
It's a
like a
lot
lighthearted
lighter and yeah.
action adventure book. And the movies did a pretty good job of kind of capturing the vibe of the Hobbit, but man, it feels so different.
Yeah.
So different. So it's really cool that we're coming back to that. Yeah, man. Anything else you want to mention about that storyline before we
No,
hop
I
on
mean,
to a different
I
one?
think of all the like different aspects of this TV series, I think their story in particular plays up like the horror aspect of it, and also like the sort of like the darkness in humanity. I think that's really what that one's doing more than anything, is talking about like how fickle people are and how like prone to weakness. And also like kind of in juxtaposition of that, there's a lot of like talking about how elves are indifferent and elves are like so farsighted that they can't see what's right in front of them. And like this is that, like they had this whole army grow
Mhm.
literally right under their noses and they had no idea. And I think that's a cool way to show that.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. For sure, man. All right. We're going to move on to another aspect here. And this is one that I know specifically Infinity Bro Mark has been very critical of, this aspect of the show. We're going to move on to the Harfoots. So we've got Nori Brandyfoot, who is kind of the main character in this storyline. These are like, so the Harfoots, for those of you guys who aren't watching the show, are basically like early relatives of hobbits, basically.
Right.
And they even have very similar surnames, like Brandyfoot. Brandy Buck is a very common surname in Lord of the Rings. And then let's see, Poppy Proudfellow. I think Proudfoot is a
Proudfoot.
common
Proud
surname.
feats.
Proud Feats.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. They're very specific about that. You're right.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, there's a couple. I mean, they're very similar, and obviously, I mean, you get that vibe right off the bat when
Yeah,
when
for
you
sure.
come to the Harfoots. But they're like nomads, basically. They're traveling from place to place, and I suspect that if not in this season, in future seasons, we will see them eventually settle in the
End up at
Shire.
the
I think,
Shire,
yeah, I think that's going to be a little bit of where that storyline is headed. But kind of the main thing with this is they get this suspicious stranger that comes down in a meteor,
Right.
lands right next to them, and Nori befriends him, and basically they've got him on their side right now, helping them out. Um, I've heard a lot of people say that this potentially could be Gandalf, which to me doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. What do you make of the stranger, Jarrett?
I think he's like, we know for sure that he has to be one of the what are they called in Lord of the Rings? They're the wizards, but there's a name for him. I
Yeah,
can't think
I
of
know
it.
what you're talking about.
Like we think that he's one of these, or at least that's
Right.
my opinion of it.
Hmm.
I've heard, obviously, like I've never read the Silmarillion, so I don't know, and they can't even base it off of that, anyways. But
Right.
people say like lore accurate, this cannot be Gandalf, and I trust
Right.
those people who are telling me this.
Right.
But I feel like with everything we've seen so far, this has to be one of those wizards.
Mhm.
It's not Radagast for sure, because that dude is a goofball, and this guy is not that.
Right.
But I'm interested to see like who it is. Is it Saruman? Is it some other, like they don't talk about the blue wizards much, and I'd love if it was one of those, but I don't know, man. Like I think it's cool that we don't know, right? Because we
Yeah.
have all these names we've talked about, like Durin is a big one, Isildur.
Mhm. Yeah.
You
Mhm.
know, like we're touching on all these characters that we know from the history. And so I think it's cool to have this like unknown and play with it a little bit and have everyone be like, oh, could it be? I think those are fun aspects of the series because in the same way that like we were waiting for Mephisto and WandaVision, like we're waiting for the big reveal of this one. And
Right.
I think that stuff is cool for sure.
Yeah. Right. So okay. So what you're talking about is the Mire,
Maya,
or
that's the word. I
they're
couldn't think
the
of it.
primordial spirits created to help the Valar first shape the world, and basically they sent them to Middle Earth to help with the threat against Sauron.
So
So
you
you've
might know
got
this better than I do, but the if they get corrupted, the Maiar, they turn into Balrogs. Is that right? What is the
I
lore
don't
behind that?
think right. I don't think that's quite accurate because obviously Saruman
Yeah,
became corrupted at some point.
Maiar and Balrog. Let me Google this
Uh,
real quick.
yeah, there is some connection between them though. Um, I think you're definitely onto something there. But that was actually like the first time I saw him come on. My first thought was Gandalf, but like it just doesn't seem to line up that it would be Gandalf. And like you said, there's a lot more Tolkien smart people that I've been following that don't believe that it's him, and I trust them as well. But I wonder. My other thought was, and yeah, obviously Radagast is in that group as well. But Saruman was kind of a thought that came to me
Yeah.
later. I was like, because he was totally on Gandalf's side until the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So there's a good couple thousand years where he is fighting Sauron and all the darkness that he's got in Middle Earth.
And we could see like maybe the seeds of that being planted. You know, he refers to himself at one point. He's like, "Am I a calamity?" Because he talks about the fireflies that he killed.
Mhm.
And I'm
Right.
like, that was the point where I was like, maybe, you know.
Yeah. Right. So yeah, I mean, there's still questions about that, and I think you hit it on the head. Is that like I think that's good that we're
Mhm.
questioning this and that we're wondering about this because that's going to keep people interested. It surely is keeping me interested in this show for sure. So, but yeah, there's definitely a few different things. I personally, I'm not on the side of Mark where he despises the storyline. For some reason, we'll have to have him on a future
Yeah.
episode to tell us why he really hates this storyline. But anytime anybody mentions a Harfoot, he's like,
He loses his
dumb,
mind.
burn them
He's
all.
so mad.
That's
I have no investment in the hobbits. Like, I don't know. They're okay. I feel like they're just kind of there to be there. I am
right.
invested in this storyline because of like Meteor Man, the Stranger,
Right,
whatever they
exactly. Like he's definitely got a bigger part to play in
Yeah.
this show and in Middle Earth. So we'll
If it
find out.
was Gandalf, which again I don't think it is, but if it was Gandalf, this would explain why like every time he goes to do anything, he's like, "All right, let's bring a Hobbit with us." Like that's our solution.
Yeah, right. So yeah, I mean, a lot of interesting things with that. I mean, there's the only thing that I really think is more interesting along with the Stranger in that storyline is just all the early callbacks to hobbits, which
Oh sure.
I mean, if that's the only thing you're going for, you should have just given us hobbits straight up instead of their early descendants. But I think, it's cool to see that like we're in the early stages of Middle Earth at this point, and we get to see how things have progressed when we get to the Lord of the
Right.
Rings trilogy. So that's kind of a cool aspect, but definitely not something that is worth its own storyline. So the Stranger definitely is the stuff that keeps that storyline going for sure. So the last one we get to is Galadriel. So this has been basically the point of contention for everybody on the internet, which I don't really understand. I don't get it because I think the actor that plays Galadriel is fantastic. Morfydd Clark.
Yeah,
She's
dude,
doing
she's
like a
killing it.
fantastic job. So the most common like criticism I get or I see on the internet of Galadriel is that she's not supposed to be like this hardened warrior because she's like a woodland witch in Lord of the Rings. And it's like, did you guys read anything? Did you read the
Right.
books? Did you know anything about Lord of the Rings? Like this is where I think that people are literally just pulling from the Lord of the Rings movie trilogy
Right.
because obviously they don't really have any other reference besides that. But like in the books, it literally says that she was like fighting the rebellion against Sauron. Like,
Yeah.
it's not that far fetched to think that she was a warrior, and I think, yeah, I just don't really understand why everybody's so got their panties in a bunch about this. I think she's doing a fantastic job. I think she's awesome. She's powerful, and like this is what we wanted when we watched Lord of the Rings. We want a sweet, like an elf doing sweet warrior moves
Yeah, for sure.
and taking people down. Like, why are you complaining about this? I don't get
Yeah.
it. So that's the one thing that I wanted to point out before we kind of dove deep into her storyline. But like, she for some reason is the point of contention for people on the internet, and I don't get it. That and the black elves, like
Yeah.
those are the
They're
two
so
things
mad that
you
people of color and
I don't
a fantasy
understand.
series, yeah.
Like, why is this a thing? It makes zero sense to me.
Yeah.
But anyways, what do you think about Galadriel, Jarrett, and how Morfydd Clark is portraying her in this series?
I think this is really cool. Like, they really dive in, and I don't fully understand like this point that they're making, but they dive into like how she's fought darkness for so long that she's become the darkness. Like, I'm not really buying that, but because she just seems like a good character.
Yeah, right.
She is like the most relentless, like, which I feel like is very elven. Is the thing that like they circle back to a lot in Lord of the Rings. Is like elves are very like set in their ways. They do things a certain way, and so her like blatant disregard for whatever's going on around her, like she has one mission and one mission only, and I really appreciate that. And I think the conflicting nature that we see in the very beginning, and then like everything after that is just her resolute and her goal. And I love the way that they portray that, because I think that's you need those sort of people in the series to carry it. Everybody else can be wishy-washy, but you have to have somebody who's like, this is my path that I'm on. And I really appreciate that. I think the actress is killing it. I think the storyline between her and, I just blanked on his name. What's that? Halbrand? Yeah, Halbrand.
Yeah, Halbrand.
I think that him being like almost like an Aragorn, but more like Aragorn was like whatever, doing his own thing, and I think he accepted being a king a little bit quicker than Halbrand. Whereas
Right.
Halbrand is like, nah, I'm a dirtbag, and there's a reason why I'm not king.
Yeah. Right.
I love this storyline, man. And then we get to see Isildur just like once
Yeah.
again screwing everything up. Like this dude can
Yep.
do nothing right, and I'm like, that seems appropriate.
Yeah. I love that they're keeping keeping that for sure. But yeah,
He's just
I
a
think
sloppy human being, and I'm like, yeah, that's the dude
Yes.
who turns his back on
that
humanity.
totally makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you here. Halbrand, I still haven't really been able to get a good read on him.
Yeah.
He definitely, we're going to learn more about his backstory, but he's got something in his backstory that they're not telling us for a reason yet. And we're going to find out why in the next couple episodes. Cause I think there is only, let's see, I think there's only 2 more episodes left in the season.
Oh
which
my
is kind of
gosh.
wild to think
It's
about.
too short for me.
Yeah. But this episode 6 started things rolling. Like there's stuff going down now.
Yeah, for sure.
So, because 2 of these storylines intersect, I'm sure we're going to get the third one here at some point, obviously in the last 2 episodes. But yeah, like Halbrand has been a weird part of the story that I really just haven't been able to put my finger on. And I think we're going to find out why in the next couple episodes.
Okay.
'Cause
one thing I got to talk about too, does the actor that plays Halbrand, I don't know what it is about him, but he reminds me of, what is the guy's name in Witcher? Jaskier, Daffodil.
oh yeah, he totally
I don't
does.
know
I didn't
why,
even
but
think
every
about
time
that.
I see him, I'm like, they could be brothers. I don't know. It's so weird to
You're
me.
totally right. Yeah, I didn't even see that, but that's that's pretty funny. Yeah, and he, despite the pretty negative tone that he has with pretty much everything, he kind of is always smiling.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I kind of never noticed that. That's
He
a
gives
good
me that vibe
comparison.
100%. Yeah.
Love that. So anyways, Galadriel and Halbrand basically become companions, and up until this episode 6 here, not really willing companions. They're kind of just like playing each other to get what they want until this episode. Now they kind of have a more solid purpose. Like you totally see when Galadriel is in Numenor, she's totally playing the, oh, Halbrand's a king. Like, I don't know,
Right.
we should go save the Southlands.
He
Like,
wants
she's
his
totally-
kingdom back. Trust me.
Yeah, he definitely wants it, guys. I promise.
Oh, I love
But
that.
she's playing that pretty heavy. But he obviously still has this like sigil thing, which they keep flashing this in every episode. We still know nothing about what it is. We know nothing. But it's apparently some kind of symbol that he's a king. And the one moment in this episode that I was like, really? When Bronwyn sees this sigil, she immediately accepts him as the king.
Right.
And like they see this guy for the first time, and about 30 seconds later everybody's cheering for him as their king.
Yeah, they're like, this is our guy, and we're like,
Yeah, that's the point. That's
odd.
like in the
All
whole
right.
series, that's the whole point that I was like, really? Like,
Yeah.
that's it? That's all you need? These people who have been living like in poverty for years and like not trusting anybody, including the elves who are supposed to be the good people in this, in this world. Like they just see this guy and they're like, yeah, he's our king. All right, cool. That one did make sense to me. And I'm sure we're going to learn a little bit more about why. But that was just like, what?
Okay.
Okay. All
Yeah,
right,
that
do
one's a
that.
little hand-wavy.
Here we go. And then like another 30 seconds later, the whole place blows up.
Which, by
you
the
think-
way, hell of a way to finish that.
Yeah, no kidding.
episode.
Okay. My first thought was like, okay, so this is the Southlands, right? Like this is, every time I've seen a map flashed up on the screen, the Southlands seems to be where Mordor is,
Yeah.
like on Lord of the Rings. And I'm no like, cartography expert or anything like that, especially when it comes to fictional maps. But this, like when we saw that volcano erupt, I was like, is that going to be Mount Doom?
That's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah.
I was like, is it? I mean, it's weird because like they don't show the mountain / volcano the whole
Right.
time, and then all of a sudden they
just
show
shows
this
up.
giant shot of this giant volcano erupting all of a sudden. It's like, oh wow, okay. All right, cool. Here we go. But yeah, that was my first thought. I was like, is this Mount Doom? Like, is this how Mordor is formed?
So we know too that like the One Ring was forged in Mount Doom, and we know that like Sauron's involved, and this seems to be the place where Sauron is coming. Celebrimbor is already building his tower,
Yeah.
so we know that like the rings, and that it's called Rings of Power. So like the leap between like this mountain just exploded in the place where Sauron's supposed to show up. The rings are in process of being built with this tower. They get the mithril. It's not a hard leap. I think this is Mordor. I think we can say that confidently.
Yeah, definitely. And then we'll find out. 2 more episodes. Oh, so you mentioned something that I totally forgot to bring up, is that there is a 4th storyline. We've got Elrond and Durin, who are kind of like almost duking it out. Like they keep duking it out.
I love their relationship.
Then like hugging because they're friends and like, oh no, now I'm mad at you. Oh,
that's
no,
Max and
we're
Mark,
good
100%.
Max and Mark, Elrond and Durin. So which one is which? Max is definitely Elrond, right?
Yeah, Max is Elrond, but
yeah,
that feels right. See,
Oh
no,
my gosh.
I'm trying to think. I think it's the other way around, and here's why. I feel like under duress, Max would bring Mark to his house for dinner, and Sarah would be super nice about it the whole time. And whereas like Mark would always
Max is
invite
just
Max
trying
to
get him to
just
break
trying to
the
get
whole
him out the
time.
door. Yeah, that feels more right to me.
Yeah, I could see
Gosh, I
that
love
definitely for sure. But yeah, you're totally right. Like, man, the actors that they chose to be Durin and Elrond are nailing this relationship. Like, this is fantastic.
Oh, okay. I will take one thing back. I said there were no like subpar actors in this. I don't know what it is, but I feel like the Elf King is phoning it in every episode. Like,
dude,
no disrespect to this guy, but I feel like,
you know what he reminded me of? He reminded me of the actors of Asgardians in Marvel.
Oh yeah,
like
okay.
Matt Damon and like his crew.
Yeah,
like he looks like he's got like fake elf stuff on,
and everybody's ears are perfect, and his look like swollen and taped on.
I don't know either. Like, and he is supposed to be like a bad guy, so that's probably why they didn't like, make him more distinguished and blah blah blah, all that stuff. But like, you're totally right. I got that vibe the first time that I saw him on screen. I was like, there's something weird and off about this dude. Like, I don't know what it is. But
every time the humans talk about like how big of a dick the elves are to them, I picture that dude and I'm like, no, I get it.
He's the guy. He's the guy that makes the elves look like dicks. Yeah, you're totally right. He is the guy. And then, I mean, Elrond is all chipper and just like happy all the time in this. But like, it's so funny to see how you go to the Lord of the Rings trilogy and Hugo Weaving, who plays,
oh my gosh, it is
him
so night
brilliantly, but it's night and day between this Elrond in this series and it like it still makes sense because there's been 2,000 years of stuff happening on Middle Earth. And number one,
any disillusionment that like our bright-hearted, like bright-eyed, full heart can't lose Elrond. Like, that dude went to Mount Doom and watched our idiot friend like betray the human race. Like, it makes sense that he turns into Hugo Weaving.
Dude, I just thought of that. Like, Elrond and Isildur are eventually going to meet up and become like buds here too. Dog. Like, that's probably going to happen in this series. Like, that's just wild that we're finally getting all these relationships interconnecting in this series.
Also, the guy that they got to play Isildur's dad looks like the actor that plays Elrond in Lord of the Rings. Or not Elrond, Isildur. Like the actor in Lord of the Rings who plays Isildur and doesn't
you're not wrong.
They look alike to me, and I was like, that's a cool callback. That's the only one that actually looks the same.
Yeah, that's true.
That's cool.
I mean, I could see there's definitely like young Elrond definitely has like
similar features,
brighter and like I don't know,
Yeah.
wider features. Like
Yeah.
older Elrond seems like taller and like more proper and distinguished, which he is at that point. But yeah, man, I think that is honestly probably my favorite storyline though. Like the relationship between Elrond and Durin is
It's
just
fantastic.
incredible.
It's so good.
And they, man, like, so for all of the drawbacks to The Hobbit, they did a pretty good job with some of the elves in that,
Sure.
or elves, excuse me,
The
the
dwarves.
dwarves
Yeah.
in that show. Thorin being one of them, like he was fantastic. A lot of them, obviously, like they used probably half of those dwarves for just comedic relief in that show. But like they are doing the dwarves great in
They're
this
so
show.
well done. Yeah.
They look so good. And I think there were some, because they took those liberties in The Hobbit, like we have this idea of like the dwarves as just jokes
Yeah.
from The Hobbit. But in this series, they're legit, man. And every time we come upon a crew of dwarves, or especially in that, like, I think it's the first or second episode when Elrond and Durin are having the like rock smashing contest,
Oh yeah.
and you see the dwarves just like surrounding them in the ring and stuff like that. Like, man, that
was
is so well
fantastic.
done. Like all those dwarves look so good.
The singing to the stone was really cool.
Yes,
That was
that was
dope.
cool. That was
The
so cool.
the joke that he plays on the elves, where he talks about how the table is like sacred.
That was so
I
funny.
that
Oh
is
my
my
gosh.
favorite part of this
And
entire
Elrond
series.
picks it up too.
Yeah, he's like, you were joking. And then the kids running around with the helmets on. Obviously, you know,
Yeah.
I have 2 boys. That is
Yeah.
100% what my boys do. Like, I'm raising
Yeah.
dwarves. They would put on
Totally.
those giant helmets and just smash into each other.
Yes.
Oh my
That's so
gosh.
awesome. Yeah. And the actress who plays Durin's wife, what's her name? She is phenomenal
Edible.
as well.
Dude, she's killing it.
Was that her actual voice? Because if it was, like, kudos, like that was fantastic.
That
when
is
she
a
was doing the scene with
great
the stone.
question. Why is she
that
not
was-
listed on IMDb for the cast? Am I missing something here?
Mm-hmm.
It's not on the front page. I feel like she should be on the front page.
Disa, that's her name.
Yeah, dude,
Sophia?
she's phenomenal.
Sophia Namvit. Yeah, but she is doing an incredible job. Like, she's hilarious. She's like, I love how it's like just a great husband-wife relationship between her and Durin. Like, Durin obviously knows like she's not to be messed with, and he still like kind of does his thing and like tries to get what he wants, but like he knows at the end of the day
he's gonna do what she says.
He's gonna do what she says. Which is fantastic. But yeah, that storyline probably my favorite part of this show so far, honestly,
For sure.
But that elven dwarf relationship always has been intriguing. You know, going back to the Lord of the Rings and Legolas and Gimli. You know, having the contest of how many orcs they can kill, and you know, becoming friends, even though there's just like the huge stigma, and Elrond and Durin in the show.
And I love that they put up the build up to that, right? Because you see sort of the seeds being sown, and then that scene where they turn their back on them during, like, and obviously this is in Hobbit, when they turn their back on them when Smaug comes, that hits so different now. Like that whole scene, and that always has been kind of a hard hitting scene in there, but like now it's like, dang, that's why the relationship exists between Legolas and Gimli, where there's this animosity. Like, it fully makes sense.
Yeah, exactly.
But
yeah, just everything about that. And then we kind of get a little snippet of the mithril that the elves. So the elves find out. First of all, how do they find this out? I have no idea. But they find out that they need the mithril basically to keep their tree alive and keep their way of life alive, basically, is what it comes down to. And Elrond knows that, like, this is super dangerous for the dwarves. So, like, this is not an easy ask to be like, hey, can you mine a bunch of mithril for us so we can stay alive? Because you're going to probably lose a lot of dwarves to mining mithril, because we find that out in like, I think it's episode 3 or 4 or something, where they're Durin and his buddies are secretly mining mithril because his dad doesn't want them to, because it's so dangerous. And he luckily does not lose any of his dwarves, but it's like a super, precarious situation. Like, it's really difficult to mine, probably would lose a bunch of dwarves if they kept doing it. So we kind of were stuck on that ending, was that Elrond finally tells Durin, like, hey, I know this sucks big time, but like, I was misled, and this is the real reason why they want, us to have this relationship. So yeah, we'll find out where that goes as well. And then we've got Celebrimbor, who has kind of become, started out as kind of a major part of the story, but now it's kind of taken a little bit of a backseat now that we know that the real reason that they wanted Elrond to reconnect with Durin was to get the mithril. So
it's
it's
interesting. I know, like, the video games are not necessarily the most canon thing in the world, but it is wild that, like, in Shadow of War, Shadow of Mordor, he's this like super BA like orc slaying machine that helps and in this he's like a little fruity,
yeah, he's like just this career politician type of dude. And I love that, but like, I also love the Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War games, so it would be nice if they treated those.
Are those considered canon? I assume not, right?
I don't actually know. I always kind of assumed they were canon, just because there's so much space in between the Silmarillion and like Lord of the Rings. Sure. There's a lot of space in there that you can kind of make up a lot of stories. So I kind of assumed they were canon, even though they're like not really in line with anything that's in either of those two stories. But maybe they're not. I don't know. I need to do more research and probably end up reading the Silmarillion.
I shouldn't get us off track because we are an hour into this, but yeah. So Matrix does this thing where like every IP involving the Matrix is canon. Like, anytime somebody uses their IP, it is canon. It is locked in. And so Morpheus is not in the newest Matrix because in Matrix Online, the MMO, he dies. And they're like, shoot.
Oh yeah, I totally.
They're like, shoot, that's canon now. and I'm like, imagine being that committed that you're like,
oh my
I
gosh,
can't retcon this MMO that we released like forever ago.
But how many people do you think played the
like
Matrix
15
MMO?
people played the Matrix,
right? Like, that's so funny. I did hear about that when
that's
the
brilliant.
newest
That's
movie
so good.
came out, though. That's hilarious.
I feel like everything should be like
dude, now that we're talking about it though, I'm itching to play those games again. For some reason they popped up on my YouTube too, like somebody like fighting one of the like
I'm not joking. I
warlords.
Just downloaded. I just tried to download it like as we were speaking. I'm on the PlayStation app right now. And I do not have enough room on my PlayStation to download it, so I gotta go clean it up first.
Gotta delete Rocket League once again. And yeah. All right, guys. Well, let's go ahead and rank it. We've talked about it ad nauseum here. So, Jarrett, what is your final thoughts and ranking of Rings of Power up to this point, episode 6?
I am furious at myself for missing out on this. I think if you are even the slightest Lord of the Rings fan, you're doing yourself a disservice not watching this. It sucks to me so much that they couldn't get the rights to the actual Silmarillion, but I think in spite of that, this is a 6 out of 6. I am enjoying this ride 100%.
Yeah, I am absolutely right there with you. I also give this a 6 out of 6. So Infinity Snap for Rings of Power until Mark comes on, gives it a 4 out of 6 because he hates the Harfoots.
They're not here. Listen, nobody else is here. We can say whatever we want. It's an
true.
Infinity Snap.
That's
what
true.
Are they going to do?
Infinity Snap. There you go. I do think there's one thing that bugs me, and it's that we haven't seen more character development out of Galadriel. I know that she's an elf that's been alive for thousands of years and still will be alive for thousands more years
Right.
after this. So like how do you expect a lot of character development in such a short period of time for somebody who lived that long? Like I
Yeah.
get that, but at the same time, she still has basically the same attitude as she had as episode 1. And being 6 episodes in, I'm kind of like, I'm waiting for her to turn a corner and be like, okay, yeah, I have been a little like
Bit
hard-headed
much. Yeah.
throughout this. So I'm hoping that happens through the last couple episodes. But still, beyond that, like 6 out of 6, this show is fantastic. Absolutely loving it. Can't wait for the 2 final episodes of Rings of Power. So check that out on Amazon Prime Video. Great show so far. It's going to be.
I would love if you
awesome.
made it this far and you haven't.
Yeah,
seen
you
the
should.
series,
If you
but-
haven't, if you're listening to this and you haven't watched that, that's incredible, actually. So
we're proud of you.
kudos to you. All right, we gotta. Gosh,
We gotta scoot on
we're already
Andor,
at
huh?
like an hour for this episode,
Yeah.
but we are going to talk about Andor. We have a little bit less to talk about with this. I feel like.
Yeah, for sure.
So we'll go ahead and kind of zoom through Andor for the last part of this episode, but Star Wars Andor dropped on Disney Plus. They dropped 3 episodes last week, and then a 4th episode this week. But talking about Cassian Andor, who was in Rogue One, the latest. Well, I shouldn't say the latest. It's been a while now since Rogue One came out, but one of the later newer Disney. That was Disney. Yeah, that was Disney at the time when Rogue One came out. But I think honestly, a lot of people really, really liked Rogue One. It's
We
kind of
came in with the lowest exit. Like, I don't know how you were, but I think
Oh,
everybody
yeah.
came in with like do we need this? Or
Right.
not, maybe not even that, but like to some effects of like, what does this have to do with anything? And
Right.
I don't know a single person who walked out of that experience upset. Like, it is still
Exactly.
top Star Wars movies of all time.
Yeah, I'm on the same boat as I was like, why do we need this? Like, what is important about this? But walking out of that, I mean, incredible. A lot of Star Wars fans regard that in their like top 3 or 4, Star Wars movies. Like, so it is very popular even among the Star Wars community, which is pretty incredible.
That's hard to
seeing as
do,
the
'cause-
Star Wars
yeah.
community is pretty
The
brutal
most
at
toxic
times.
wasteland of fandom. Yeah.
Yeah. So Andor, prequel series to Star Wars Rogue One, in an era filled with danger, deception, and intrigue, Cassian will embark on the path that is destined to turn him into a rebel hero. So yeah, this is set like 5 years before Rogue One happens. Diego Luna is playing Cassian Andor, and he has done a fantastic job. We've got 4 episodes. Like I said, 3 episodes dropped on day 1, and then we've got this latest episode this week. So basically, Cassian Andor is this kind of like, I don't know, thief, rogue kind of character, and he's kind of just making a living for himself at this
Yeah.
point. And even in this latest episode, he basically says like, I just want to live. And like, that's all he doesn't really want
Survival
to
is all
commit.
he cares
Yeah,
about, yeah.
survive. He doesn't really want to commit to a cause. He just wants to live his life is kind of what it comes down to. So he gets recruited by Stellan Skarsgård playing Luthen Rael.
Oh
Rael?
my gosh.
Rael?
Dude, the Skarsgårds are
Bruh,
on fire.
yeah,
Man. They cannot stop.
He is phenomenal. Like I when he showed up, and I think we saw a clip of him before the series dropped.
Right.
But when he showed up in this series, I was like, yes, absolutely, yes.
Please.
Love that he's in this, and man, just so far, everything that I've seen with the casting, they've been spot on. So Cassian Andor basically is trying to make a living, and he gets recruited by Luthen Rael. I don't know if I'm saying that right. So basically, this latest episode, just to kind of get caught up, is Cassian. He gets dropped into this covert operation to hijack basically a quarterly payroll of the Empire, which
Right.
is like kind of bonkers because as we see, there's only like 7 of them that are in on this.
Yeah.
So it's like on a remote planet. There's somewhat low security, because they know that nobody would do this. They're like, basically, and they've mentioned this several times throughout the first 4 episodes, the Empire is like pretty proud of themselves at this point. Like, they don't think anybody is even capable of standing up to them. So they're like getting pretty loosey
Really
goosey,
cocky,
probably extending themselves a little bit too much. And then Cassian Andor comes in. He had that piece, Imperial like piece of equipment that was really highly regarded, that
That star,
kind of attracted
whatever it was
star
called.
capsule something or other.
Yeah.
I don't know. But like, people were kind of like, oh, how did you get that? Like, that's a pretty big deal that you have that. And so like, they basically, and he's asking a lot of questions on this planet that he's on. He ends up killing those 2 cops or security guards or whatever they are in episode 1. And so the security crew comes out to track him down, and Cassian and Luthen basically wreck this security crew,
Yeah.
which was pretty fun to watch. It's like, and this isn't even like Empire at this point. Like, this is a private like security crew that is like apparently overseeing this planet that he went to, and then the Empire starts kind of sticking their fingers in and taking over.
It's such a wild leap to do that, where it was like, that was I don't want to get too nitpicky, but that was one of the things where it was like, it'd be like if I went and robbed Walmart, you know what I mean? Like, I pickpocketed a Walmart, and that Walmart guard was like, I'm going to that dude's house. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, no, totally. It totally is like that. And the main security guy or whatever, Cyril Karn, he's like, oh man, I gotta go track this guy down.
Biggest D-bag ever.
It's the biggest D-bag ever, exactly. And he's totally full of himself. Like, his boss is like, dude, just drop it.
Leave it alone.
Don't get involved. This is like, yeah, I mean, it sucks that 2 of our guys died, but you're not gonna get anywhere with this. And he did get anywhere with that and more. Like, he literally got his whole crew killed or super in trouble with the Empire by the end of it. So, man, but I mean, the way that Cassian handled that was really cool. Like, I love how, and it's a little bit of Luthen as well. Like, he seems to have a lot of like savvy and street smarts, but they come up and Cyril, we see this guy just like hiding in this house because he's a total coward. Like, he doesn't want to be a part of the confrontation at all. And Cassian comes up and just like, you hear the gun click right by his head.
Gosh, that was cool.
The dude just like pees his pants like right away. Like, he's so scared. He's like already sweating and stuff like that. I was like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic. But
I love it.
I've heard a decent amount of criticism in this show, mainly being that it's pretty slow moving so far. And I don't disagree to a point, but I think this goes to the point that you were making earlier, Jared, is that like, especially in a Star Wars series, like, man, we're waiting for the Mandalorian to like show up and blow something up, you know, like we want something to happen like right now. And this is a different type of Star Wars story. Like, I don't think we're going to get a ton of action in this series. Maybe not at all. I don't know. Like, it seems like a more covert, like spy type operation that we're gonna get into. So, what do you think of this show so far? What are your thoughts on kind of the reception within the first 4 episodes dropping?
I think I understand where people are coming from with the too slow. Episodes 1, 2, and 4 are very like setting up to something. Right. And the thing that frustrated me, because I was like, you know, we shouldn't complain. And when I was watching 1 and 2, I was like, okay, they're really building up something cool here, especially with his relationship to, what is the gal's name, Biz or whatever?
Yeah, right, something like that.
And they were kind of doing this thing where Bix, where her boyfriend was, you know, did this betrayal thing. And then the payoff for that was like she gets her head beat against the wall, and Bix, who's like the biggest, or her boyfriend, who's like the biggest d-bag ever, like charges a bunch of people who have guns on him,
That was
and then
so
just
weird.
dies. And I'm like,
Just dies.
what were the first 2 episodes for in this like relationship that you've built? Because that was
Yeah.
the dumbest thing I've ever
That was a
seen.
weird payoff for sure.
So I don't know, man. I'm like, episode 3 was a ride, and I had a lot of fun with that.
Yeah.
The first 2 episodes I was there for just because I was like, okay, clearly they're making something happen. I think that's important. The payoff of that sucked.
Yeah.
The episode 4 I enjoyed a little more than the first 2, mainly just because Mr. Skarsgård acted his heart out.
For real,
Him
dude.
playing like the antiquities dealer and seeing like that different sort of, because he always plays these serious roles,
Mhm.
and him playing like this, like, oh, I
Yeah,
have this.
super happy.
I
And
was
then
like,
he just in a moment
wow.
flips
Yeah.
to like the underground dude
Yeah.
talking about
Oh my
like, you know,
gosh.
rebel secret rebel
Oh.
stuff was just like,
It was so
wow.
good.
that was awesome.
The him like meeting the crew and them being distrusting of him is like very stereotypy. The thing that I don't like, and I hate Max for planting this in my brain because I can never escape it now. Max always talks about like the Disney formula with these TV series, and looking at like how they keep flashing back to Cassian's backstory with like him on the planet, and then you know they kill the guard and he gets kidnapped or whatever, is so formulaically like they sort of did this with they really did this with Mandalorian. Like this is the Mandalorian backstory all over again. And then they sort of did this as well in Book of Boba Fett, where they kept jumping back to like, and the payoff isn't there for me. Like you could have showed me, not told me. I don't need this all played out.
Right.
Just have like brief mentions. That to me, the flashbacks are doing absolutely zero for me.
Yeah. I see where you're coming from. I think they've been minimal enough to where they haven't detracted from the story for me. I mean, you mentioned Book of Boba Fett. That was the one that I was upset about because they were going somewhere with those flashbacks. Like they had a whole freaking storyline with his flashbacks, and all of a sudden they were just like, now we're gonna focus on what's going on here and now.
Yeah,
and it was just like, okay, like why did we spend
what were you
all
doing
that
this
time?
for?
Like I don't understand. Like there was a clear, and I think there's something to so they've been doing this with Mandalorian as well, and you can't see it quite as much in that show, but like with Mandalorian and with Book of Boba Fett, they've got different directors for almost every episode. And with Book of Boba Fett, it showed like really badly. Like the first 3 episodes of Book of Boba Fett were a whole different vibe than the last 3 or 4. Like just totally different, seemed like totally different shows. And that's not always a bad thing, but you got to wrap it together somehow. And they just didn't do a good job of that in Book of Boba Fett. I don't think it's a travesty in Andor so far. If they keep going with it, and they keep, spending more time on it, I think it'll keep, getting to that point with me. But I think it was helpful in explaining a tiny bit of his backstory. If they drop it right now and we don't get any more, I'm fine with that. Like I don't need any more. But if what we have had, I think is minimal enough that it didn't, for me, detract too much from the story. But I think at the same time, like it's been moving slow enough to where those flashbacks were a little bit of a like kind of a refreshing, like, oh hey, okay, now we're seeing something different rather than just like kind of slow moving dialogue and story building aspects. So I see where their purpose is. I can't say that I'm like 100% like all in on them, but I think they serve their purpose, and hopefully they don't dwell on them too much in the future. But yeah, I think like you said, like Skarsgård's got to be one of my highlights so far over the first 4 episodes. Like this dude just like he steals the scene anytime he's on screen. Like he he is just really fun to watch. And Diego Luna has been doing a fantastic job as well.
Oh, for sure. No
I think
complaints there.
I think he's a great choice for Cassian Andor, and he's somebody who potentially could carry a show, I think. So we'll find that out over the next how many episodes are in this first season here? I don't even know.
12? Is that right? I feel like that's too many.
Is it that many? That'll be interesting because
I might be like way off. How many? Okay, let's see.
no, you're right. It is 12.
This is 12. Okay. I
Yep.
thought I had heard that, but I wasn't sure, and I was like, I think
I like that. I like that.
Yeah.
I like that they're extending that because we've gotten a lot of these really short seasons. I think Mandalorian, we were right around there, right? Like 12, 13, 14,
That feels right.
somewhere in there. But Book of Boba Fett, I think, was only 7. All of these
Yeah.
Marvel shows, have been 6. So yeah, I like that it's 12 episodes. And these episodes are decent length too. They're like 40 plus minutes.
for sure.
So I think they're doing a good job developing the story. We're still not seeing a whole lot of payoff yet, and I think that's okay. I can't wait to see what's going to happen. I personally am
for sure.
really loving the vibe of this show. It
Yeah.
feels almost like more sci-fi than Star Wars.
Yeah.
Like I haven't gotten a full-blown Star
like
Wars
a Blade
like
Runner-esque.
right.
Like
Yeah. It definitely feels a little different than your typical and darker, not to mention too. Like
For
oof,
sure. Absolutely.
I definitely have been feeling like this is serious.
I mean, the series opens with him straight up murdering two
Just straight
people.
up murdering dudes.
So,
Yeah,
like
I know.
He goes to a strip club and murders 2 people in the first 5 minutes.
Well, and like, so it's Star Wars, right? Like,
yeah,
you're, and he's the main character of this series. All of our Star Wars main characters, sure, they've been like conflicted about
Right.
stuff they're doing, but they're all generally protagonists, like good
yeah.
people, right? So Cassian, first episode, when the first 10 minutes of the show gets apprehended or whatever, and he puts his arms up, and you're thinking like, oh yeah, he's probably gonna run away and like get on a ship and no, he like chucks this guy, kills him, and then when he's got the gun to the other guy's head,
and he's
you're thinking
begging for his life, and like
yeah,
we'll
he's
go
begging
explain
for
it
his
together.
life. I was like thinking like, oh, he's gonna probably
Knock him
do
out and run
something
away or
to
something.
like
Yeah.
just knock him out, like run away, whatever. No, he just shoots him. Just shoots him in the
Straight
head.
up murders this
Yeah,
guy.
just dead. He's like, oh, okay, that's how we're gonna play this then.
So my
Alrighty then.
my boys love Obi-Wan. Eli tells me all the time. He's like, "Can we watch Obi Kenobi?"
Love that.
And so I was like, well, maybe Cassian or maybe Andor would be like one that they would watch. And again,
no.
in the first 5 minutes, this dude goes to a strip club and then murders 2 people. Luckily, they did not watch that part with me
Good.
or any
Yeah.
of this so far. But
Actually, I had
thought
a similar experience. So I started watching it on the family TV. And generally, I just watch my shows by myself because my wife doesn't usually have much
Sure.
interest in watching like my nerd shows with me. So started watching on the family TV. Just everybody was home and we were just hanging out. And like you said, within the first 5 minutes, this all goes down. And I paused. So my wife kind of gave me the side eye because it was like looking dark and stuff like that. And I paused it literally as he's pointing the gun at the guy's head.
Oh no!
And I was like, yeah, I probably should watch this by myself later.
Yeah.
I started up again, like whenever I got around to it later. He shoots the guy, and I was like, oh, okay,
Wow.
it's a great thing I paused it right there. I did not think he was going to shoot the guy. I literally was thinking like, oh yeah, he'll let him go or whatever,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely got a darker tone. It's not your joke cracking, funny Star Wars show. And like Mandalorian was serious, but like there's definitely still kind of your Star Wars like comedy scattered throughout Mandalorian as well. But man, yeah, this is going to be a different vibe of the show,
sure.
and I'm excited for that. So, yeah, man. Any other quick notes on Andor before we kind of close out the episode here?
I just hope that it keeps building like towards something good. I think
Right.
I can forgive the slowness if you continue to have episodes like episode 3. I thought episode 3 was really good, and I think the more of that you have like throughout this, the better.
Right. Yeah, I'm with you. All right, what do you rate it through 4 episodes so far?
I'm gonna go 4 out of 6 with the hope that like it'll get better. I don't hate it. I still think it's a good series, and I think Star Wars fans should be watching this. But it is hard to like go from Rings of Power to this.
Yeah,
It's a kind of a jarring shift. So 4
Right.
out of 6 for me.
I'm with you. I think I will give it a 5 out of 6. I think production has been really good.
Sure,
I really
absolutely.
like the casting. I'm really invested in the story. I definitely is slower building, and I think it's got potential to climb up on the score for me. But honestly, like watching these first 4 episodes, it's nothing mind blowing. It's nothing like, oh, this is the best Star Wars we had since something else. Like I'm not thinking any of that in my head. I think it'll
Can
be
I
a fun.
say, I want to add this into your thing because I was just thinking
Sure.
about this as you talked about like production value.
Mhm.
You made a point to say that like this feels more sci-fi than Star Wars.
Mhm.
We haven't we've seen like really 2 major characters, not even 2. We've seen 1 major character that was an alien. Everybody is human in this.
Yeah,
And I thought that was kind of
yeah.
odd.
That is kind of interesting, and I think they have been primarily on the one planet. What is it, Ferrix?
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe Ferrix is just a human planet, and that's why we haven't seen a whole lot of other alien races yet.
Right.
And we have been kind of dabbling in Coruscant now
Right.
with like the political side of things. So I'm sure we'll get more. But yeah, that's an interesting note. Didn't even really notice that. But yeah, it definitely feels less Star Warsy and more
For
sci-fi.
sure. It feels Blade Runner adjacent to me. I think that's the best way to put it, which is fine. Like
Yeah.
Blade Runner is super hot right now. Everybody's going nuts over the anime, but
Yeah.
it's cool.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm excited to see more though, so it'll be fun. And I think Andor will be continuing to go after a lot of these other shows that we're doing or reviewing are over. So
For
we'll
sure.
probably
Something to
be
hang on to.
diving a little bit deeper. And and a lot of these other shows too, like we're getting to the finales. I mean, this is only through 4 episodes of 12 episode season. So we got a lot of ways to go. This building might continue through,
Right.
those first half.
I
of
hope
the
they
season,
bring in
so.
halflings just to make Mark upset. So I hope by the end of this, I hope there's a bunch of
Harfoot's
halflings
randomly
with it.
showing up with a big dude like pushing their cart behind them.
Yeah. Gosh, I
That would be
love that.
hilarious. And sorry to Mark in advance. He's gonna hate Andor after that happens. Anyways,
Hey, how much you want to bet he's listening to this right now in his car wherever he's at, and he just threw his phone across the room?
he's just so upset right now. Let us know what you guys thought of Andor or what you guys thought of Rings of Power. Let us know what you guys are expecting from the rest of these seasons. You can let us know on social media: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, TikTok, YouTube, all the things. You can email us at infinitybrospodcast@gmail.com, or you can head to theinfinitybros.com. You can leave us a message there, and you can get hooked up with all of our podcast avenues and all the other things we're doing. You can check out the Daily Snap for some new reviews and a quick my last thing that I did on the Daily Snap was a quick review and blurb on Avatar: The Last Airbender, which I finally got done watching. So
That's wild.
fantastic
you.
show, by the way. 6 out of 6. I'm like, that's one show that I was like mad at myself that I didn't watch earlier. I was like, wow, this is like possibly the best animated show of all time, and I totally slept on that for my whole life. So yeah,
Heck yeah,
definitely
brother.
go check all that stuff out. Thank you so much, Jarrett, for hanging out with us.
Absolutely.
it's been a
Glad
good
to be
time.
here.
Alrighty, and thank you, Infinity Bros Universe, for making us a part of your podcast experience. We will catch you on the next episode of the Infinity Bros podcast. Love you 3000. Bye.
Bye. Woohoo.
Whew. Hour 25. That's a long
we
one.
kind of went wild with Rings of Power, huh?
I'm okay with that because, like I said, we should have reviewed Rings of Power
Yeah, for
a
sure.
long time ago. So I'm glad you got caught up on it though, and I'm glad you were here.
Bro, if I was feeling horrible yesterday, and I was like, man, if I cannot get it together for, if I felt that bad today, there's no way on earth. But luckily, I was able to lock it in.
Yeah, definitely. Whew, man, I'm sweaty. It is hot in this room right now. I had to open my door because I'm literally like I have sweat like dripping down my face right now.
That's me every time.
Because you're in your little closet.
Yeah.
Woof.
We gotta fix this for Max, or he's gonna be mad at me.
If you could make your own stream room, Jarrett,
Yes.
what would you do with it?
Dude, okay. Christian is helping me because I have no design talent whatsoever. I would want to do one of two things. I would either really lean into like the magic and D&D stuff and build like a really cool looking tavern, or I would go with like a really clean aesthetic with like just a few lights, a lot of like whites and grays, and then like maybe a splash of color, and that's it.
Yeah. I know like when we started all this stuff, you were like, I don't want to be that typical streamer and have like RGBs like in the background and like all over.
And here I am.
And now, right. And now you, me, Robbie, we all have like just the typical streamer thing going on.
It's so true.
I think when we buy our next house, I would love to have a dedicated, I mean, this is a dedicated room to like streaming and stuff, but like having the bed in the background, I feel like really kills the vibe for me. So I wish I could have a corner of a room, and I honestly probably could rearrange this to where I could maybe potentially like just have a camera angle to me against a wall or something like that.
So what we're going to do is I'm going to gut literally everything out of this. We're going to repaint the walls, and then I'm going to shift my whole desk to where the camera's like, I'm looking at it kind of like this, where I just have a wall behind me. And I got to get on that. My life is so busy right now. I'm not getting paid for doing the student teaching, so I'm going to start working night shifts as well to get paid. And so I'm like, man, I am, what is it? What does he say? Like butter over too much spread thin over
scraping butter over too much bread. Yeah.
That's
dude, I've been that. Oh gosh, I should have mentioned that. That's like my favorite book quote of all time.
It's so good.
Like it's for sure. So like as an adult, like there's no words to there's no words to describe that better than that phrase. Like it's just so good. I need to reread those books again, man.
I read Fellowship in middle school, which is a mistake because I did not follow.
I know, dude. I know. The first time I read through them, I'm pretty sure I skipped large chunks of the lore sections because number one, I can barely read those because of all the like elven stuff that he has in there. And then number two, it's like reading like genealogies in the Bible. Like it's like like bro, I know this is applicable and I know like God put this here for a reason, but like man, I'm
not taking notes on this.
this is not able to apply to my personal life in anytime soon right now. So
and that's the hard thing is like I used to be able to just lose myself in a book for a good long time.
Yeah, dude.
But when you have kids, you get interrupted every 30 seconds. You know what I mean? Like Eli was so excited today to show me like the same costume that he's worn every day for the last like 3 years. You know what I mean? I'll be like, Dad, look, I got Spider-Man on my chest. And I'm like, Dog, I know. You have Spider-Man on your chest every day. Every shirt you own is Spider-Man.
Oh, that's the best. Kids are awesome.
They really are. This is great.
All right, man. I'm gonna go talk to my wife before she goes to sleep here.
That's a good call. I'm pretty sure Christian's already crashed, but we'll see.
My wife might also be. She's been going to bed earlier lately, so
if Christian's not awake, I'm gonna go download.
Dude, I might do that too right now. Honestly, now I'm like really wanting to play it.
They need a co-op Shadow game.
Oh, that would be so sick.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. I never finished Shadow of War, actually. I think
I've
I got
never
about
played Shadow
halfway
of War.
through
I
it.
played Shadow of Mordor like all the way through, and
I think Shadow of
bested
War
the
was
game.
one of them was a PS Plus game a while back. I don't remember which one it was.
I think it's Shadow of War, and that's
Is
the
it?
only one I haven't played.
Okay, nice. Well, there you go.
I'm
All right,
ready to go.
patrons, love you guys.
Oh yeah,
Talk
love
to you
you
later.
guys. Bye.
Bye.